5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Many of us are familiar with the Christmas story, but do we really know the details? When you dig a little bit deeper into what we read in the Gospels, knowing in the historical context what they mean, there's actually a fascinating world that opens up to us. And that's what we're going to look at today on Ignition. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Bergwald, and we want to set your faith ablaze so that you might live the adventure that comes from a relationship with Jesus Christ. Before we get into the Christmas story, we want you to know that we love listener feedback. So if you've got questions about today's episode, or if you have ideas for future episodes, please contact us. And the easiest way to do so is by email. The address is ignition@sfcatholic.org. Again, ignition@sfcatholic.org. I am joined in studio by my illustrious co-host. That's what I used for Father Dickinson way back when.
I've been on enough to gain that title.
You have.
Okay.
So Renae Kranz is here. Hi, Renae. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So, Renae, we are recording this earlier in December, but folks are listening to this
when it's still Advent.
It's still Advent, but people are listening to this. It's still Advent 2.
Okay.
But it's the fourth Sunday or shortly thereafter. If you're listening to this on radio when it's airing, the Monday of the fourth week of Advent. So still the Advent season, but we're coming up to the big day. Advent this.
Yeah. If you don't have your Christmas shopping done, you better hurry up.
Better, yeah. The week that you're listening to this is the busiest week of the shopping year. So Good luck with that. So I said, Renae, during the tease there, I want to talk about the details of the Christmas story. But I actually want to start by talking about Christmas Mass.
Okay.
So the typical Sunday Mass has, and you and I, as part of Ignition, we're doing
the meander through the Mass.
Meander through the Mass. Sort of unpacking the Mass. So we've talked in that series, I've alluded to not long ago, how there's sort of the set prayers of the Mass, the order of the Mass, and then there's the proper prayers, which are proper to that particular Mass. So the third Sunday in Ordinary Time has prayers that are specific for that Mass. There are parts of the Mass that are the same from Mass to Mass, but there's others that vary from Sunday to Sunday or Holy Day to Holy Day. So most Sundays and most Holy Days have one set of prayers and readings proper to them. Do you know how many propers there are? How many sets of unique sets of prayers and readings from Scripture there are for Christmas?
Nope.
Do you want?
Well, there are probably 4.
4? Why 4?
Well, I'm thinking Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
Mass at midnight, Christmas morning. But isn't there one like earlier in the day on Christmas Day too, or something? I don't know.
Renae, I'm very impressed.
Okay, I can't remember.
So most people.
Oh no, I know why I know that, because we were looking at whether or not we were going to record a Mass on Christmas. So we were looking at all the different Masses that were available.
And you and I did talk about this we talked about this not too long ago. Most people do not realize that there are 4 sets of prayers and readings for Christmas.
Right.
Again, your average Sunday has one set. What doesn't matter where you go, Saturday night or anytime on Sunday, there's one set of readings. Right. Christmas, there's a Mass at night for the night before.
Right.
There's a midnight Mass, so prayers and readings for that Mass. Midnight Mass has its own set of prayers and readings. Mass at dawn, dawn has its own prayers and readings, and then Mass during the day has its own prayers and readings. But when you're, especially for people who have like a devotional like Magnificat, 4 options to pick from. Now, here's the thing: like what the church allows for is oftentimes your typical at least American parish, usually, and the church does allow for this, the priest might pick one, especially of the readings. He might vary the prayers according to when Mass is being said, but usually he'll pick one set of readings.
Okay.
And whether he's saying Mass at 4:30 on Christmas Eve or midnight Christmas Eve or 11 a.m. Christmas morning, he'll use the same readings for others. Do you know why?
So they don't have to do a different homily for each one?
Yeah, I mean, the practicalities of
that would be terrible.
God bless our priests. They got to prepare 4 different possible homilies depending on
Merry Christmas. All right, let's move along.
Yeah. So there are different options for the masses. So we're getting now, okay, what's this got to do with the Christmas story? Mass at night, so the Christmas Eve Mass, gives us the gospel for that set of readings, gives us Matthew's version of the birth of Jesus. Mm-hmm. Mass at midnight gives us the first part of Luke's account with the actual birth. And then Mass at dawn gives us Luke's account of the shepherds and the angels.
Oh, okay, right.
Okay.
I've never been to that one.
I don't even know. I mean, again, this is the global church, right? I mean, and somewhere in the United States, there's probably some parish somewhere in our country that has a dawn.
Right.
I don't think it's a very American tradition, as far as I know.
Doesn't the cathedral have a dawn one? I don't remember.
We don't. Inquiring minds want to know. We don't. There's
maybe
not that I know of.
Okay.
And then, so there's probably somewhere in the world, like Christmas Mass at dawn is obviously a tradition. The church wouldn't have created, hey, everybody, why don't you do a Mass at dawn?
And then no one does it.
Yeah. So that's out of some tradition, which that's one of those things where I'd have to get back to you if you want to know more about that. Mass during the day, what gospel do you think we get?
I would guess Luke, but
good guess, but we actually get John's prologue. In the beginning was the Word. So it's actually not
even a...
Thanks for the buzzer, Bill. It's actually not the traditional, the birth of Jesus. Right. It's about the quote unquote origins of the Word. For all eternity, the Word was God, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Right. So the very high, majestic.
Okay.
All right. So there are, though, the most well-known one. Mark doesn't have either of those.
Right.
Mark's gospel, wait for it.
Waiting. Still waiting.
The beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. As it is written in the prophet Isaiah the prophet, behold, I will send my messenger. And then verse 4, John the Baptist appeared in the wilderness preaching about baptism. Right. So it jumps right to John the Baptist doing his thing out in the desert.
He felt no pressure to do the infancy narratives whatsoever.
Mark, commonly believed to be reflecting Peter's eyewitness account primarily. Mark's is the shortest, and he gets right to the point.
Right.
Okay. Mark and Matthew and Luke, though, are the ones that give us the traditional Christmas story. So, Renae, this is where, tell me in an abbreviated version, nutshell, tell me the Christmas story.
Like the night of Christmas or the whole from the...
Whatever you want to do. The short version, but you can start where you want.
Okay, well, an angel tells Mary she's going to have a baby.
Right.
She's pregnant. There's all this stuff with Joseph, and here's the abbreviated version.
Yeah.
And then they have to go because of a census. Go to Bethlehem, so they travel to Bethlehem, and there's no room for them anywhere, so they go to the cave stable, and Jesus is born and laid in a manger.
Okay.
There.
All right. Then
abbreviated version.
Great. Well done. Now give me. What else do we know? Think about, so we have here
Shepherds
in the studio.
come, the wise men come 2 years-ish later. I wrecked it, didn't I? Sorry.
Totally wrecked it.
The wise men come, and then they have to flee to Egypt at some point.
Great. All right. Well done telling the abbreviated, even though, yeah, you did sort
That
of give away the
super
punchline.
abbreviated,
So
sorry.
we do have, and appropriately, because we're still in early Advent, as we're recording, an empty-ish
The animals would have been there.
staple.
I mean, that sheep probably wouldn't have been there because he would have been with a shepherd.
Right. Probably, yeah.
But we need, I guess maybe that's why he got tipped over. Maybe
So we think
him.
about the creche scene popularized by...
I don't know. Oh, no. I'm going to get up.
St. Francis.
Oh, I did not know
St.
that.
Francis really popularized the creche scene, the
Okay.
nativity scene. So what do you normally see, when it's not locked and loaded, when it's full, when it's complete, you've got Mary, Joseph, baby Jesus,
An angel.
animals, angel,
Yep.
shepherds, and the wise men,
Yes.
magi, whatever you want to call
Usually
those
one
guys.
shepherd, which is
Yeah. So we have this idea of what you said, where Mary, so especially fast forwarding a little bit in your version, they've got to go to Bethlehem, and they get to Bethlehem. Mary's, the baby's coming, Joseph. Motel 6 is full. Super 8's full.
there were no inns.
The
Stop
Ramada
it.
is full.
This was just on the radio this morning.
We're going to talk about
the
it.
inn thing. So
But it says in the Bible there was no room for them at the inn.
this is a
So they go to
translation
the
issue.
You are so smart. You're just ruining this. I gotta give you credit where credit's due. I'll
That's
explain
right.
the by the bell
That's
in a
right.
little bit. So they go to a cave. Jesus is born, and he's laid in a manger. What's a manger, by the way?
A feeding trough.
What? See, you're so smart. And then
We've talked about this stuff plenty of times. I better remember it sooner or later.
And then I think last year's Christmas special for it, yes. And then the shepherds show up because the angel told them to.
Right.
And then the wise men show up. So a lot of those details are definitely correct. Some of them are absolutely wrong.
Right.
And in between, there are some fascinating nuances. So we're not going to go in any particular order here. We're going to dig into those details, bust some of those myths. Mythbusters
Yes, please.
episode of Ignition, referencing a book, I think probably by,
Michael Barber.
You
My
got
husband
it.
just bought that over the weekend.
Yes,
He's reading
yes.
it now.
So we're giving that away. It's my parish for Christmas.
Ooh,
St.
nice.
Lambert's in Sioux Falls. So
Nice.
don't come to St. Lambert's and take away all the copies, please.
I'm coming there.
We'll talk about those details in just a moment. But if you're just tuning in, welcome to the show. I'm Chris Bergwald. This is Ignition, and Renae Kranz and I are talking about the Christmas story, diving into some of the details. We've gotten the overall version, talked about really the mass readings and so on to begin with. But what I want to do with the rest of the show, Renae, is again look at some of those details, some of those commonly held myths that are just that. They're myths.
And some of them are silly myths at that.
Silly myths. So we are just going to hop around a little bit so we don't have to, because I want to kind of go to the things that we find most interesting.
Right.
And I'm excited because you do know some of these things, so I want you to chime in. But starting with Manger.
Yep.
So we have talked about this before in some of the things that we've recorded, but I love the reality. So Jesus is born somewhere to be discussed. And Mary, Luke tells us in his account that Mary, gave birth to her firstborn son and wrapped him in swaddling clothes and laid him in a manger because there's no place for them in the inn, but we'll get back to that.
Right.
Wrapped and laid him in a manger. So you said this already. What's a manger?
It is a feeding trough
For
cattle, livestock.
livestock.
Yep.
Jesus is laid, when he's born, he's laid in an animal's feeding trough. So if you've never been to a farm, you're at least familiar with the idea that livestock will go up and they'll feed out of a trough of some sort. Might be hay for cattle, corn for cattle, whatever, grains, whatever it is. They go and feed, and those things feeding troughs have been around for thousands of years.
Got to feed them out of something.
You got to feed the livestock somehow. Jesus was laid in a feeding trough. There wasn't a crib. There wasn't a
Wasn't a cradle.
no
which I've heard
cradle.
sometimes.
There's not a 4-post mattressed golden thing,
Nope.
which you might think there would be because this is God. This is the King of the universe who's been born. For goodness sake, couldn't Mary and Joseph have like done it up a little bit for,
Well, if there would have been room
God?
at the inn, maybe.
So one thing about the humility of our Lord. So this was not by accident.
Right.
None of this, and these details are going to just open. None of this is all unfolding according to God's plan. Unfortunately, when I think about that, everything is unfolding as He has foreseen. Sounds like the Emperor Palpatine to me. But the Lord is not the Emperor Palpatine.
No.
But God is working His plan, is always working His plan. And when it comes to the birth of His Son, the fact that His Son was born and laid in a feeding trough is not, oops, I missed that detail.
I didn't give him a place to go.
Can I get same day delivery for a nice crib here? No. It was deliberate. Deliberate that Jesus Christ would be laid, the King of the universe, God made man, will be placed in a feeding trough. Why?
Because He becomes our food.
Because He is the bread of life. The Word of God is the bread of life. We receive Him as Catholics every time we go to Mass and we're able to receive Holy Communion. We receive Jesus. We are nourished by the bread, by Jesus Christ. When I pray, I'm nourished by Jesus. It is most fully in the Eucharist.
Right.
But He is always nourishing us by His Word when I read Scripture, when I'm with Him in prayer, personal prayer, or as a family. But yes, definitely at Mass. Oh, what are we talking about today? Christ Mass.
Yep.
It is especially at Mass that I'm nourished by the Word. So how appropriate, how fitting is it that when He's born, He's laid in a place where animals feed out of. What town is this again?
Bethlehem.
Bethlehem. What does Bethlehem mean?
House of bread.
So so it's David's hometown that has its own significance. But the word, the Hebrew, and however you pronounce it in Hebrew, Bethlehem literally means house of bread. So the one who would become bread to nourish us, or take on the appearance of bread in the Eucharist to nourish us, was born in the city which its name literally means house of bread. And when He is born, He is placed in a feeding trough. I just
blows your mind.
I love that. And again, the name of this great feast that we celebrate, whether the sacred sense or the secular sense, it's called Christmas. And that comes from the word Christ Mass. Because this is a Mass which we celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ.
Yep. None of this was an accident. You're right.
None of this is an accident.
It's all on purpose.
So that's one of the details that I love.
Yeah.
But what's another detail? Maybe one that you've learned new or an older one?
Yeah, this one that I learned this morning about the inn was quite interesting, I thought.
So do you remember it well enough? You know bits and pieces of it.
I can sort of explain it. You might have to fill in the details, but the word inn does not mean like a hotel.
Right.
It's actually means a room, and it's the same word. Was it a Greek word?
Yep.
Same Greek word that's used for the upper room with the Last Supper.
Yep.
So there's this connection, and they're making this connection on purpose in the text, where there's no room at the inn, there's no room in the upper room, but now He's in the upper room and gives it becomes the sacrifice.
Right. So I don't remember the Greek word myself, but the word that and we talked about this in last week's episode about the different translations.
Right.
So I love the RSV-CE, the Revised Standard Version Catholic Edition, but it says, this is Luke 2:7, because there was no place for them in the inn.
Right.
And that's actually reflecting the fact that the King James Version translation of the Bible into English uses this word, and a lot of not just Protestant but even Catholic translations into English, even modern ones, still use this word "in" for the Greek word. I'm not going to take time to look it up right now.
Yeah.
But that Greek word, there's another word that Luke uses that could be translated in the parable of the Good Samaritan.
Oh, sure.
The Good Samaritan
When he
brings
takes
the
him to-
injured.
yeah.
He takes it to the inn. That word there is properly translated in, but the word that is translated in Luke 2:7 is better translated guest room.
Right.
So it's a guest room in a home. So Jesus, Mary and Joseph takes Mary because there's the census to his ancestral hometown,
Right.
not where he was necessarily born, but he's descended from the line of David. So all those of the Davidic line should, for the census, go back to Bethlehem,
Right.
where David was born and grew up. So Joseph takes Mary to Bethlehem, and while they were there, it gave time. So they didn't show up. They didn't show up, and Joe, he's coming. The baby's coming.
It's not like the movie?
No.
The most recent?
They
one of the more
almost
recent
certainly had been there for some time.
Ah, okay.
At least, probably, maybe a few months.
Oh, okay.
Maybe a few months. Yeah, we have time to get into those details, but at least several weeks, almost certainly. While they were there, it came time for her to give birth. Where are they? They're not in an inn. They're not in an inn. They're in a family's home.
Okay.
Which were often built at the site of a
I have no idea. Oh, a cave?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, cave outside of at Bethlehem. They're staying with relatives of Joseph. And there's no room in the guest room for Mary to give birth, because there would almost certainly be a midwife there,
Right.
Joseph, Mary herself. So there's no room in the guest room. So she gives birth where the animals are, which is not outside, which is not in the barn. It's in another part of the house.
Okay. Oh, sure. Yeah.
In the first century, most of the homes basically had the public space. Well, it's not really. You have the guest room, but then you have the other room where you sleep, you eat, and where you have your living quarters.
Right.
So if the Kranzes were going to host the Bergwalds, there's two rooms at the Kranzes
Right.
house.
Right.
You've got the room where you and Ryan sleep and eat, and where you entertain guests.
That's the smelly room.
And that's where the livestock. Well, we'll get back to that in a minute. And
You
then
just blew right past that.
Yeah,
I love it.
and then there's the guest room, which is where the Bergwalds get to stay.
Right.
But it's in the primary space, eating, sleeping, living, that where at nighttime, you bring the animals into that room out by the door. If it's out by the cave, it'd be near the entrance to the cave. Why would you bring your animals in the house, for goodness sake?
Well, they needed to protect them from predators
And
thieves.
Thieves. Livestock isn't cheap.
Right.
So you
Well,
bring
and that
them,
might be the only thing they really own of any value.
right.
Yeah.
Why else might you, especially when certain times of the year, why might you bring them inside?
I suppose it could be too cold.
It gets cold, and
Yeah.
so the heat from the animals helps warm
Sure.
the house. So the animals are inside. There's no room for them in the guest room, so Mary gives birth to Jesus in the main room of the house where the animals are, and the animals eat out of a feeding trough, or AKA a manger.
Right. See, I didn't know all that because all I heard was the little teeny part on the
So, by
radio.
the way, the book on a lot of this is Michael Patrick Barber, The True Meaning of Christmas,
Yeah.
subtitled The Birth of Jesus and the Origins of the Season.
Yeah.
Great book. A
Yeah.
lot of these deals are all but Dr. Barber collects them all into this nice
Yeah.
little book.
He's great too. I've seen him on some videos.
He's
and
fantastic.
He's awesome.
We only have a few minutes left, so I want to jump to the
Okay.
one that you wrecked in
Oh
your.
yeah, sorry.
So usually the manger scenes, the creches have the three wise men.
Right.
That's
Completely
not historical.
no.
Why not?
Because the wise men came. If the star appeared when Jesus was born, they would have followed the star. Well, you can't do that in a few hours from where they are.
There's no
There's
no cars.
Right.
There's no,
No
trains, no planes, no
Yeah, the
automobiles.
so it's probably a couple of years. That's what they think.
and so it was up to probably near 2 years before they get there. Why? How else do we know that actually more explicitly?
It's because of when they meet Herod, and then Herod has sends out the order to kill any child under 2.
Under 2.
Yeah.
The reason why Herod gives the order is because child 2 years younger, so they don't know exactly the birth date that this baby boy was born, but they know it's been sometime within the last 2 years. So Herod's just going to cover his bases, kill all the baby boys who are younger than 2. Mm-hmm. So we don't know that Jesus was actually 2 or nearly 2, but he could have been up to 2. Mm-hmm. And it was almost certain. And we're told that when the Magi do show up at the house, I wrecked it. They don't show up at where Jesus was born. When they come to the house where the child was.
Yeah. So they had settled in Bethlehem then.
Yeah. So
were living there.
They were living there.
Yeah.
Joseph a carpenter. That's a trade that you can do anywhere. Right. Again, they're probably Mary and Joseph probably thinking to what this child was going to be. It probably made sense to them. We should stay here. This is where David's from. The angel told Joseph told Mary that they're going to be the Messiah. This is going to be the Messiah. So it would make sense for us to stay here.
Plus, who wants to travel with a newborn?
Right.
I mean, come on.
But that's the thing. So it's almost certainly not. Well, 90+% sure they did not show up when Jesus, within days or even weeks of when Jesus was born. Months, if not well over a year before they show up.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the point, the thing I want to, so having maybe blown up your conceptions, but they still came and they did him homage and they offered him those gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. So we're coming to an end here. Gold.
The king.
Yep. Frankincense.
That's for the priest.
So hinting at his divinity, and myrrh.
That's for the sacrifice.
So he would die. Mm-hmm. So whether the Magi knew the significance, the symbolism, that's what those gifts meant. Right. Or that's the deeper symbolism that they had. And that is true even if Jesus was maybe in his quote-unquote terrible 2s. The terrific 2s in the case of the God-man, giving Mary and Jesus Joseph no problem whatsoever. So, but just a little more details. Again, read Dr. Barber's book, The True Meaning of Christmas. But in the meantime, Renae, have a Merry Christmas.
Hey, you too. Thanks, Dr. Barber.
You bet. And that we'll wrap up this episode. Again, you can email us, ignition@sfcatholic.org, with any thoughts, questions, or ideas for future episodes. Until next time, may God bless you. And once again, have a blessed and Merry Christmas.